Happy Saturday, everybody. We are so happy to be here with you on this weekend, taking time out of our weekends to engage in conversation around something that is really near and dear to our hearts. I am here today with my colega and my amiga, Doctora Sandra Osorio from Illinois State University. And my name is Dr. Tracy Flores, and I am an assistant professor at the University of Texas at Austin. And we are both members of the Ed Collab. And we are so grateful to be here with you today. And I can't say that enough. And to engage in a conversation around books that feature strong, powerful Latina characters.
The title of our presentation for today is Chicas Poderosas Reading and Writing Strong Girls.
And so as we begin our conversation and thinking about all the books that have recently been written, and also, I don't want to say historic because not that long ago, but books that have been written in the 80s and 90s, we thought it would be important to begin our conversation with the words from Furia. And Furia is one of my favorite books at this moment in my life. And I believe that Furia came to my life for a reason. And Furia is written by Shamale Said Mendez. And this is a story about 17-year-old Camila Hassan. And she lives in Rosario, Argentina. And this is a place that is has a very patriarchal society. And she is a 17-year-old coming of age within this context. And she is a talented and fierce soccer player who dreams about being a futbolera. And when she goes onto the field, she is transformed into La Furia. And she is alive and she is free and she is in her power. And her dream is to play on an American team, to play professionally. And so in this book, she finds her voice. She tries to make her dreams come true. And she also stays true to herself, trying to break boundaries and trying to uplift her ancestors, those that walk alongside her, and those in her own family, including her mother. And we start with the words of from La Furia. And this is one of my very favorite quotes from the book that says, "I smiled and ran to the field to sing the wordless song of the captive women who roared in my blood. My ancestresses had been waiting to sing for generations. I was their medium." And so in these words, La Furia is channeling her ancestors. It's channeling all the women, all the silent voices, all the women who she carries with her. And she steps into this power and brings them along with her on the football field, on the soccer field. Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to start with this quote as we think about what it means to read and write strong girls and the importance of reading and writing strong girls alongside our students, both female and male. Mm-hmm. And so as we continue our conversation, we would like to share a little bit about who we are and why this matters so deeply to us. I am a second generation Chicana, and I am a daughter of a mother who was also born and raised in Arizona. And I grew up in a household full of stories, full of storytellers, full of prayers and healing ways and remedios. And I carry that with me. And in their stories, I've learned about the challenges my mother has faced, as well as the joy that she carries with her and the hope and love that she's instilled in me. And I have my own daughter, Milagros, who is 6 years old, and there we are in front of my mother's house about a year ago. And I placed my hopes and dreams in her. And I really hope that she can find herself and see herself represented in the curriculum and in the books that are presented to her and the books that are written about her as a bicultural and emerging bilingual young lady. And when I was growing up, I was an avid reader and I didn't see myself in books. I still continued to read and I was still searching for myself, but also representations of myself. And so this deeply matters to me as someone who's trying to devour all these books now to kind of heal that younger Tracy while also presenting them to my own daughter as mirrors to her experience, and to also understand who she is and the contributions of our ancestors.
Mhm. And I'm a first generation proud daughter of Colombian immigrants. And so I grew up in Chicago in a Spanish speaking household, but did not go to bilingual education. I went to monolingual English. And so really stories were what kept me connected to my language and to my culture and to my family, my extended family that was in and still lives in Colombia. And so now raising a daughter that's Esmeralda, who's 8 years old, it's really important to continue those stories and sharing for her to have that pride in that language. And that's something growing up in the United States that's been hard for us because the United States is very subtractive. It's very much, English is the language that you need to have. And so we've tried and continue to try to raise her bilingually, but it's a struggle because sometimes she doesn't want to use the language. Now I feel, now that we're a couple years in school, she now does have that pride. Like she says very proudly, I am half Mexican, I am half Colombian, right? She's very proud of that fact. She's very proud of the fact that she could speak Spanish. And so really those stories and making sure that she is able to read stories where she sees strong female characters, girls that play soccer, girls that do lots of different things. It's really important. Also girls that have similar linguistic practices as her, right? That bilingualism, the linguistic plurality. So that's super important for us.
And that's why we do this work, and that's why we engage in these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And to further anchor our conversation, I wanted to share this book. We wanted to share this book with you, Nerds, Goths, Geeks, and Freaks, Outsiders in Chicanx and Latinx Young Adult Literature. And it's an edited collection of essays curated and by Trevor Buffone and Cristina Herrera. And in this book, it's a survey. I don't want to say it's a survey, but it really examines middle grades and young adult literature that focus on expansive views of Chicanx and Latinx young adults as they move from childhood to adulthood, in that liminal space that is so messy and full of growth and tensions, but that is where that growth really happens. And so in this book, I really see it as a love letter. I see it as a love letter to all the brown boys and all the brown girls residing in the margins and the fringes of society. Everyone in this collection write directly to and for the Chicanx and Latinx youth who are considered outsiders in their own communities, as well as by a white stream society that reproduces static, outdated, and monolithic views of what it means to be Chicanx and Latinx in the United States. Their words embrace these outsiders and all their weirdness and nerdiness, disrupting the many borders that confine and seek to silence, control, and contain them. And so within this collection, we are provided with theoretical and pedagogical tools for this work, for this conversation as well, and thinking about the many ways to be a girl, the many ways to present yourself as a girl, the gender scripts that we are raised within, and the ways in which the books that we are going to discuss today really break these boundaries, really show this expansive view of girls and girlhood as the girls move from girlhood into adulthood. And so I wanted to share this with you, and I hope that you'll also check it out too, because in this presentation, a lot of what is the essays from this book have really is threaded throughout the books that we've selected as well.
Mm-hmm. And so we wanted to go ahead and share some of the books that we've used and found that show these chicas poderosas. And so here are some of the first books that I've used in relations to abuelas and elders, right? That really are a lot of times our story keepers and our story sharers, which is so important for us to continue the stories through generations and generations instead of being lost. And so we see Pulpo Gusado, or octopus stew. And so in that story is about making a very typical Puerto Rican dish that the abuela makes, octopus stew, and how the little boy imagines the octopus coming alive and the grandma, but it's really showing the grandma how she's sharing her culture, right? And linguistic practices with her grandson through the experience of cooking this meal. And then we see Last Stop on Market Street, which is the Spanish version is La Última Parada en la Calle Market. And so that one also has a grandmother, that travels on the bus with the little boy CJ. And he's wondering, why don't we have a car? Why aren't we able to travel? And she talks about all the amazing experiences and stories that we're able to hear while traveling on this bus. And then the final book is Lola, which is the Spanish version, and Island Born is the English version. And so in this book, the little girl is tasked with writing about where her family and where she's from, and she doesn't remember. And so it's this process of trying to talk to elders and different individuals that help her remember in order to be able to draw about the island. And so in the story, she says, Abuela, I'm supposed to draw a picture of the island for school, but I don't remember it. Why don't I remember it? And so later on, the conversation continues, and it says, just because you don't remember a place doesn't mean it's not in you. Will you tell me what you remember most? Lola asked. So she's talking to her grandmother. Grandmother told her, don't worry, just because you don't remember doesn't mean it's not a part of you, right? And that's what we try to do through our generations, through our stories, right? And that's why it's so important to include these stories in the curriculum classrooms, because we really want these stories to be represented. We want students to continue to see themselves and recognize there isn't a level that they have to have of knowledge in order to be Latinx enough, or a certain level of the language. It doesn't, just because you don't speak Spanish does not mean you're not Latino, right? You don't have to speak Spanish. It's the stories that really carry us through. And so we also see stories of, our stories, our histories that are super important. So we see Sembrando Historias, which is the story about Burel Belpre, which is a Puerto Rican librarian in New York City. We see the picture book story of Selena. Anybody that's older really knows Selena. I know I'm trying to make sure that my daughter also knows Selena and her music. That's very impactful in our lives. We see the book Una Niña Llamada Rosita, which is the story of Rita Monero, award-winning Puerto Rican actor, dancer, and singer. And so these we see, important members of our community that we need to learn about, right? And see their experiences and how they were able to either overcome challenges or what kind of experiences they had in order to make those connections to our own lived experience. And then we also see, autobiography type books like Areli is un dreamer. And so this is, a dreamer is considered a person who came at a very young age, undocumented, right? And didn't even know that they didn't have papers or US citizenship or whatnot. And so that struggle, that in-between place where you feel like you're not from your home country because you don't remember that place, right? But the United States is saying where you've always lived is saying you're also not part of here. And so that's also a very important story to share. And that's a great picture book. And then Soñadores, Dreamers, which is the story of Yuyi Morales. She talks about her hopes, her passion, her strength. And it's the story of when she came over with her infant son to the United States and her experiences. And so then we also see books that are about like Chicas Poderosas. So here we see Beya's Recipe for Success. And so it's a story about a little girl who's not really good at anything, right? She tries stuff, but gives up rather quickly. And then, with her grandmother, she ends up having to try and try again, to make these cookies that she's trying to make. And it's really about this intergenerational, right, relationship between the grandmother and the mother, and how she's able finally to make these cookies. And it has the recipe in the book, which is also very great. And then we see this book, which I love, Your Mama. So it's like this twist on Your Mama jokes, but it's actually like positive and talking about like fierce women this are. And so, for example, this is one of the quotes from it. It says, "Your mama's so strong. She's like a Marine, up 3 flights of stairs, carries the groceries." And so it's just so important to be able to see strong female characters, characters that aren't only like in the household, right? They're out doing things, is super important. And so we also want to make sure and take the opportunity to also include writing and invite you to do some writing. And so our first invitation to write is related to Tia Isa Wants a Car. And so it's a story about Tia Isa and the little girl, and they're saving up to purchase this car. And then when they're finally able to purchase the car, they're able to go out, farther into the community. It really opens up their opportunities. They're able to go to the ocean for the first time with their family. And so the car really opened up opportunities because they didn't have to just go on the bus line, right? Just only the places that the bus goes. Now they can go really anywhere. And so really we invite you to think about mujeres poderosas in your life. Could be the ones that raised you, the ones that nurtured you, the ones that won't take no for an answer, the ones that taught you to be brave, fierce, and poderosa. And so we really invite you to draw a picture and write about them. And so we're going to share some of these mujeres poderosas in our life. And so for me, when I think, like the first thought that comes into my mind when I think of Chicas Poderosas or Mujeres Poderosas is really my tia Ana. My tia Ana's, I see her as like the matriarch of the family. I really see her as a mujer poderosa. She was widowed at a very young age and left to raise several young children and run a family store in Colombia. It's been a privilege really to see like her strength and her love throughout her life. And then even her spirit, right? I remember going to Colombia. She's right now, she just turned 92. But I remember when I went to Colombia, she's like in her 70s and 90s, and she's going on these trips, these bus trips. She's like, I'm going with las mujeres de tercera edad. So like the ladies of third age is what this group was called. So she was really just enjoying life and loving fiercely. And so it's just so amazing. And she's such an inspiration to see that strength and that happiness. And that's what I hope I'm able to continue to do in my own life.
I love her fierce spirit and her continuing to live her best life. That's amazing. I want to channel her in my own life. And so every time I think about being strong and being fierce and being courageous, similar to you, Sandra, when you're talking about your tia Rosa, Ana Rosa being widowed. My nana was also widowed when my mom was in 6th grade. This is my mom's mom. And she raised 11 children on her own. And she was so small, like 4'10", and also so large in my eyes. And so I wrote a poem. This is us. This is a picture of us. And there she is in her blue apron. She always had this blue apron that she would wear. And so that's her over there with the palote, the rolling pin. And there I am on the other chair with my orange top and that blue bowl. She had these little blue bowls, and she would always cook me an olla of fideo. And we would watch The Young and the Restless. You see it on the TV, her story. And she had in the back, and I didn't, that's the best I could do with the drawing. She had a Last Supper, large. It took up almost the whole wall. And this is what I remember going to her house, just the two of us. And every time I'd come, she'd make this. And I always think about her hands and all of the healing she did with her hands. And so I wrote a poem, creating remedios with your hands, blessings and the sign of the cross to ward off ill intentions y al ojo. Hands clasped in prayer, protecting me from the outside world. Tortillas de arena rolled out hecho a mano with mantequilla melting in my mouth. Fideos en una olla, soothing my spirit and feeding my soul. And so I wanted to write a little poem, a little ode to her as someone who was fierce and strong and poderosa in my own life, and that I channel similar to you on a daily basis.
So beautiful.
And so we want to continue sharing books with you. And I just realized a lot of the books that I'm going to share are more middle grades and YA. And we did plan this just like that. And I was thinking a lot about the books that are written that feature Latina protagonists, in which these young girls are escritoras and artistas. They create art, they create writing as a way to make sense of their lives, as a way to define themselves, as a way to amplify their voices. And the books I have here have these young girls who are figuring out their place in the world. Esperanza in the House on Mango Street, and the ways in which she dreams of this existence beyond Mango Street, this borderless existence, this place where she can have a home of her own, where she can be her own person and fly and be free. And then I think about Lupita and Under the Mesquite, and the way that she used writing to heal, as a way she used writing to make sense of her mother's death. And Maria finding her voice in a new country through poetry, the poetry of her experiences, and Xiomara the same way, who was able to speak her truth through poetry. And it didn't come without challenge. It didn't come without struggle. It didn't come without conflict with her mother. But in that writing, she found her way towards who she was in her heart. Colored my words with Ana Rosa, finding her way through poetry. Gabby, a Girl in Pieces, really experiencing all these different challenges, similar to Esperanza as well, in body image, in sexual assault, and these very real experiences that our young people face that sometimes we try to push aside, or we don't want to talk about because the adults are not comfortable, because we haven't had the chance to process our own experiences sometimes. And in Gabby, a Girl in Pieces, she uses art, she uses writing to make sense of, her friends' experiences, her own experiences, and to find her voice. The first rule of Punk, Malu, I am Melu, like she is me, I am her, and I am forever grateful for Celia Perez writing this book about this young girl who uses zines as a way to process her experiences and also define herself. And in this book, she creates her own space because there was not space for her. And I am not your Mexican mother. I am not your perfect Mexican daughter. She uses writing. She is a writer, and that is who she is and who she is becoming. And then, of course, I have to include on my block, in which this young girl is a writer, and she wants to become a writer, and she decides to take some time out of what's it called? She decides to take some time off before going to college to write her memoir. And I just love this on my block, and I love the fierceness of this character, and I love the way that she is amongst her friends. She is always stand up, and she doesn't back down. And I wanted to turn to the words of Esperanza from Esperanza Writing. And I just realized I didn't say her name, Monse. Monse from On My Block is one of the best characters that I have seen in a long time, that I appreciated and that I wish I had when I was younger. And that one that I brought into my teacher education classes to talk about, what does it mean to, to honor and love where you're from and see all the beauty, similar to the books that Sandra mentioned earlier. And so I do want to share these words from The House on Mango Street, because I really feel like this encompasses these young women and who they are and who they are becoming as writers and artists. And so in Esperanza Rising, at the end, Esperanza Rising, in The House on Mango Street, at the very end, she says, "One day I will pack my bags of books and paper. One day I will say goodbye to Mango. I am too strong for her to keep me here forever. One day I will go away. Friends and neighbors will say, what happened to that Esperanza? Where did she go with all those books and paper? Why did she march so far away? They will not know I have gone away to come back. for the ones I left behind, for the ones who cannot get out. And all of these young women, girls moving into adolescence and then into being adult women are using writing in this different ways to explore who they are and who they are becoming. And I also really think these books are powerful in the ways that they show our girls that we are writers, we are storytellers, we are artists, we are musicians. And it's not something that white people do. It's something that we do, that we all do. And some of the girls in these books too also get pushback, and their Latinidad gets questioned because they are writers and they want to do these things. And so these really trouble this idea and the stereotype that writing isn't for us, when we are writers. And these books here about amigas y comadres. And I love all of these books. I love the friendships. And I'm here right now with my amiga, my comadre, my colega. And she's the one I turn to talk about work, to talk about personal life, to talk about family, to share stories about my daughter, to get advice about things. And I know she holds it close to her heart as I hold her close to my heart. And it's just us. And these stories exemplify this, exemplify healthy friendships between young girls as they are, coming of age. The Tequila worm, the two characters, Berta y Sofia, and the comadres that Sofia's mother has around her, and how she sees what it means to be modeled, she sees this modeled in her mother's friendships, the ways that they show up for one another, the ways that when something is going down in the family, they come and they mobilize, and they bring, and they draw on all of their resources. And that is something the two of them are learning to do at a young age. And they are learning that it's lifelong. It's not just for now, it's for your life. And so choose these comadres wisely. And then The Moon Within, the two characters, Sally and Magda, and the ways that in which they sing each other's song that's in each other's hearts, and they move to the rhythms of the bomba dancing, and the ways that they support each other. And even when it's challenging, and even when it's something new and something that is going against these cultural norms, these gendered norms, they are there for each other. And in that vein, they call it, there's a poem in there called My Best Echo. And then Strange Birds, these four young women, Ophelia, Aster, Kat, and Lane, and the adventures they have in their summer in Sable Palms, Florida. And I had to add La Furia again, because it's one of my favorite books at this moment. I can't get enough of La Furia. And the friendship between Camila and her friend Roxana, her soccer player friend on her team, and the ways in which they love each other and support each other and tell each other the things they need to hear, even if they don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. And even though there's a time when they kind of come apart, they find their way back to each other. And I would also say the friendships amongst the girls on the soccer team, because they are all living within this patriarchal society, and together they are trying to find their voices and trying to dismantle this patriarchy within their society. And then Evelyn Del Rey, and this friendship of, even though we're not going to be neighbors anymore, we can still hold each other in each other's hearts. And these are beautiful examples of these friendships, and not like these stereotypical friendships where people always talk about girls being catty, or girls fighting, or being drama, or talking chisme about each other. It is about true friendships, about supporting each other, nurturing each other, and helping each other be your best self, and working to dismantle and disrupt what these friendships can be. And so I really like and encourage bringing these into the classrooms, and thinking about these books in this way. La Furia, there's so much you could talk about in that book. And in this instance, I'm just focusing on the relationship between the girls. And so we have another invitation to write. And of course, we want to talk about Comadres, the Tequila worm. If you have not read this book, you need to read this book. It is based on the life. Viola Canales wrote it, and it's really based upon her own experiences too, in which she moved away from her family to attend a private school because she was a gifted student, and the challenges she faced, and trying to find her way, but also having a hard time being away from home, which are really real things that we experience. And moving away from home and needing the blessing of your family and what all of this entails. And as she's about to go away, one of her mother's comadres has a conversation with her, Sophia, and her friend Berta, and talking about what comadres are. And I want to read this to you. No, Berta, being a comadre is never a joke. This is why you must always choose them carefully. A true comadre is forever. Silence. So will you be Sophia's first one? What do I have to do? Support her dreams, that's all. And hers is to go to that school. But what if it's a big mistake? It's still her dream. She'll figure that out herself. And if it's a mistake, it's her mistake. And she'll have to learn from that. Won't you, Sophia? Yes, I said. But remember, Sophia, a comadre is always free to tell you what she thinks, like it or not. So in this passage, they see what, they see the comadres in their mother's life. And now they're starting to get these like working definitions of what a comadre is. And her mother's comadre is saying, will you be her comadre? She needs you. You need each other. Like, you need each other. And so we invite you to think about the comadres in your life, your friends, those people who love you, who nurture you, see you, hear you, and tell you the real. Even if maybe you get mad and don't talk for a week or two, they do it because they love you. They do it out of love. And so we invite you to think about these people in your life, these comadres, your amigas, your best echoes, in the words of The Moon Within. So I am thinking, here are some of my comadres, and I'm just going to read what I wrote. So thinking about Sofia and Berta, I just mentioned them from the other book, Tequila Worm. Thinking about Sofia and Berta and the mujeres that are her mother's comadres, I think about the women in my life that support me, nurture me, lift me up, tell me what I need to hear, whether I like it or not, and love me. My sorority sister and roomie, Lena, is a dear friend, a comadre, who knows me better than I know myself. Although we may not speak every day, we keep in touch through text, memes, Snapchat, and Facebook. She is loyal, always standing by me. And that really matters, that loyalty and that standing by me, because there's a lot of people who don't. And so I'm grateful to have these comadres. We established, and then along with Sandra, we established this. So that's Lena. And now along with Sandra, we established a writing group during the pandemic. Friends we met through service to a professional organization. For 2 years, we have grown so close, meeting to write and be together. We have cried together, coped, supported, and celebrated each other. Comadres are lifelong. And so I have a picture at the bottom of our Comadres writing group, who we've known each other way before the last 2 years. And the last 2 years, I think we actually got to know each other the best.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very true. And so when I think of comadre, like if you look up the definition of comadre, it sometimes will say like it's the godmother of your child or whatnot. But really, like Tracy said, somebody that you can tell anything to, that will keep it real with you. And so when I think of comadre, it really is my sister-in-law, Dania. Really close. I can always turn to her for support no matter what. She's an everyday inspiration for how she takes every day. She's had some recent tragedies in her life, but she keeps it real. Like, she shares when she's struggling. She doesn't try to fake it and be like everything's okay. I think a lot of times in Latino communities, or how I grew up, right, you have to put on this front of like everything's fine. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about struggles. We should be grateful for what we have. And that's not always okay. And so I'm grateful to Dania for always being there for me. And then also the writing group, Comadres, because, about a year and a half ago, my husband was diagnosed with cancer, and it was really, I felt like I had to be strong for him, but I felt like the Comadres was a safe space for me to not be the strong person, right? To be able to fall apart and have people there that really were there to support me, love me, and, you know, get me through that difficult time. And so Comadres is just something super important. So we really encourage you to pause the video and write a little bit about a comadre in your life. And so another thing we'd like you to consider is really start thinking about, how do you put what we shared today into action? You know, what's one aspect that you might be able to implement in your own classroom practice based on what we shared today? You know, really reflect on how can, like Tracy said at the beginning, today's Saturday, how might you be able to implement something small on Monday? You know, how might you look at a book that you hadn't considered before that shows a chica poderosa, you know, and share it with your students and engage in a conversation with them about possibly comadres.
And thank you so much for joining us in this conversation. I had a lot of fun and I could talk about books all day long. And I hope that you have learned some new ideas, some new strategies. I hope that we've introduced you to some books that you might want to consider, like Sandra said. And we invite you to keep in touch. And this is the real, like, keep in touch. We're here to support you. We're here to think with you, and also to hear about all the good things that you're doing in your classroom. And so we have our Twitter handles, and we also have our emails. And I have mine also for Somos Escritoras. So you can also see what we're up to with the young girls that I am privileged to write with.
Mhm.
Thank you
Thank
so
you so
much.
much.
Have a
Mhm.
great rest of your weekend.
Bye.
Adios.